I think we need to have a broader perspective. We need to zoom out a bit and get back to the basics of what education truly is. And this separated three-part kind of domain style of university is a better approach for young people to have a better understanding of what college is or could be, to help them save money, get on with their lives sooner, and again, be prepared to make truly valuable contributions to the broader culture. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode here at English Champion. As I have mentioned in previous weeks, this is going to be maybe my most important video. I don't know. We'll see how you guys like it, but I've been thinking about this idea for a very long time, probably 9 months to a year now. It's sort of been floating in my mind, and I've sort of, I've got pages and pages of notes that I've written down, and I really challenged myself to kind of poke holes in it and force myself to rethink some things and determine if my ideas could even be feasible or not, which is what all good writers should do. And I keep coming back to it. I can't quite shake this idea. And so I thought, all right, I have to put this out into a video and see what everyone else thinks. And feel free by the end to shoot it down, tell me I'm an idiot. That's totally fine. But this is one of those opportunities where I feel like a much bigger discussion needs to be had about education that people just aren't talking about. And so I'm just going to offer an idea. And this is one of those times where, I have the poster right here of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest on my wall for a very specific reason. One, it's about freedom and rebellion, and I like those things. But also, there have been many times in my education career, and maybe you felt this in your career as well, even if it's not in education, where you kind of look around and go, wait, doesn't everyone know that this is insane? Like, why are we doing this? And then you offer an idea that seems very common sense, or gets back to basics, or wouldn't be that hard to implement, and it would really make a lot of difference. And they look at you like you're crazy. And so I felt like this for a lot of years in my teaching career, where I look around at what administrators are doing, or what students are doing, or what other teachers do, or what school policies there are, and I'm just like, wait, why are we doing this? What, don't you guys realize you're being crazy? And then again, they call me crazy sometimes. So this is for you to decide. Am I the crazy one here? Or is this an idea that could in some way work? And so I'll leave it up to you. But what we need to get to the heart of is that education is a problem at all levels. And I'm only going to focus primarily here on the university level. I'll touch on K through 12 later on in the video, but that has its sort of own unique special set of problems. And this video would be way too long if I tried to talk about that, but we'll try to incorporate that a little bit into the ideas regarding college, because they're becoming more and more connected all the time anyway. So I will try to touch on it, but primarily this is about the university. And the irony of where college is today is that it's kind of like the healthcare industry. Here in America, and broadly in the West, but especially here in America, we have more access to healthcare. We have more access to just health information, whether it's nutrition, whether it's exercise, supplement stuff. Like, we can access anything. All right. We're smarter now about health, and there are more people providing health services than ever before. Anyone can get health. All right. You can either, whether by seeing a doctor or just by Googling stuff, you can learn a lot about how to make yourself healthier. And yet, we're incredibly unhealthy. We're sicker than ever. How is that even possible? We have more knowledge and more service at our fingertips to improve our health, and yet we are in worse shape than at any time in American history, probably, or at least in modern American history. Well, how is that possible? Well, the same thing is happening in education. At no time in history, at least here in America, have young people, and older people for that matter, had more access to knowledge and skill training. Anything you want, you can get, either through a formal schooling process or just casually by simply searching things on the internet, watching YouTube videos, connecting with other people through social media that could help you in some way. Everything is available for you to be an intelligent, knowledgeable, skilled person and get maybe not any career you want, but you can get on the track to getting most types of jobs with just a little bit of effort. And yet, the test scores show, employers tell us we have some of the dumbest young adults we've ever had. How is that possible? Again, just like health, we have more access to everything, and yet we're worse. That doesn't make any sense. So there must be something wrong with not only the implementation of healthcare or education, that maybe there's a methodology that we're not teaching properly, which that's always up for debate, or our goals of what it should be might be wrong. So we have to get to the heart of the matter. If we're talking about education reform, especially at the university level, we have to get down to the base matter and go, well, wait a second, what is all this for? Because if we have the wrong goal, then whatever path we take it doesn't matter how good the path is. If the goal is wrong, you're going to end up in the wrong place. And it seems like that's what's happening in our culture, is in the working world, or just in the culture, the political social climate. We're more messed up than we've been in a very long time. And so it seems like, again, either we've taken the wrong path towards a good goal, or we had the wrong goal in the first place, and it didn't matter what path we were on. So we've got to figure that out. What's the goal? What's the path? And it seems like our current system of universities hasn't been performing properly. And we know that because you can see every day there's headlines like the end of the university and can colleges survive? I read these things every week, and there's constant panic about schools closing, again, students being underprepared, debates about how things are taught and are things too political. Like everything is a major problem in the college world. And we're seeing that students are, if they aren't already, at some point, they are going to stop going to colleges. Now, that might be a good thing, and I'll talk about that here shortly. But, for these people who are involved in higher education, as I have been for many, many years, like, well, I don't know if that's a good idea. I think we probably want some version of higher education available. But what does that look like? And so if we're going to keep reading these headlines, well, what are people going to do about it? And so many people are offering ideas. There have been a lot of really good ideas that have been floated around lately. I've seen a number, the University of Austin is trying a certain approach to that. Ralston College is trying some of that as well. Peter Boghossian has made a couple videos about what a better form of college would look like. And there's been some things that I think probably wouldn't work very well, or they sound like they would work, but they've already been tried and they just aren't as productive as people think they are. So in the good examples, I started seeing these and I was like, my idea is slightly different than those. Those are good, but they're also sort of what colleges were supposed to be in the first place. Whereas my idea is slightly more extreme. And that's why I wasn't sure, like, am I on the right track with this? Is this going to make sense? Could this be feasible? And then I saw this video, this short by Jordan Peterson. And I started thinking, okay, this is how I've been feeling. And I wonder if we could apply this idea to an educational context. Take a quick look.
The farther you go back in time, the natural state of things is that they stay the same. Mircea Eliade, for example, when he talked about, let's say, prehistoric people, pre-literate people, we might say, for example, when they're fishing, if they're fishing people, they act out the fishing activities of the exemplary fishing hero. And then that's just replicated across the centuries, because we think that creative innovation is the standard mode of human being in some sense, and that's just not true. This expansive, global, technological society that we live in now is only a few thousand years old. At the most, it's 10,000 years old. That's not very old. We've been identical to what we are genetically, at least in principle, about 350,000 years. And for most of that 350,000 year span, everything stayed the same. Mm-hmm. And so the rule is continuity. The exception is change.
So in addition to that video, I also then just coincidentally got last month's edition of Imprimis from Hillsdale College, and an article by Roger Kimball, who's a well-known author and cultural critic who I really like. And the ideas he offers in that article are on the same path that I've been trying to think about myself. And so I thought, okay, I'm on the right track here. The universe is speaking to me that other people are having similar ideas. They just haven't quite distilled it down in the way that I'm going to for you. So I hope my idea doesn't sound overly crazy, because there are people sort of nibbling at the edges of this idea. They just aren't going all the way with it like I'm going to describe here. The fact that we have to really wrap our brains around, and it's the one that people in the education industry refuse to admit, is college is not a requirement for most people. I know everyone thinks it is, but it's simply not. Okay? There are a few fields that definitely, at least at this point, need a traditional college degree, and maybe even beyond the traditional college degree, the undergraduate degree. Those would include medicine, law, teaching, counseling for the most part, and probably engineering. That's about it. If you're going into one of those 5 fields, yeah, you probably need college. And the reason why is because there's actually, at least in many of those instances, additional state licensing that tends to require an actual college degree. So if there weren't those licensing requirements, maybe we could get by with not even having that. After all, like, do you need to be, college educated to be a good teacher? Probably not. I mean, there's lots of smart people out there who could teach something. But if you want to get hired in an official format, you're probably going to need a college degree. But that's about it. Medicine, law, teaching, counseling, engineering. And even those, I think, again, could be not always requiring college. Like, is it possible that you could go work on a construction site and learn the mechanical engineering for a couple years and then be really, really smart and capable of working in a actual mechanical engineering environment? Yeah, probably. You could just apprentice under someone and probably learn a lot. But at least at this point, most places are probably going to require that. And again, there's some licensing required as well. So if you're not going into one of those 5 key areas, you need to really rethink whether you actually need college or not, because you actually probably don't. There are other ways to be successful in this country and obtain good jobs and have fulfilling careers without college. We have to admit that. So right now, this push, especially over the last 20, 25 years, where everyone constantly talking about every student needing to go to college, is simply not true. All right. We know that this is having an effect in the workforce because recent data has shown only 52% of recent graduates were in a job requiring a college degree after 1 year. So you might think, well, there aren't enough positions out there. That's not it. There's other factors going on. Either they're not prepared or they didn't need college in the first place. So when half of our recent graduates, these 22-year-olds with a diploma, are ending up 1 year later in jobs that didn't require college, yeah, then how successful is college? So we need to be rethinking this, and we need to be sending out into the world better prepared young people, but prepared for the right life goals and the right perspectives. That doesn't always mean job training. And so that's what we're going to talk about here as we keep going. So we see a lot of headlines like this out in the culture. And this last one comes from a very interesting article. And it says this: a recent survey reveals a troubling reality. Nearly 8 in 10 recent graduates say they learned more in their first 6 months on the job than in their entire 4 years of college. What's more, employers are so wary of unprepared graduates that they're taking drastic measures to keep from hiring them. So it's exactly right. And we need to understand this. Young people, if you're out there and you haven't gone to college yet, or you're in college and you're hearing this for the first time, you have to understand you would be better off, again, in most fields. If you're in one of those 5, you probably still need your college degree. But if you're not in one of those 5 fields, you would be better off at age 18 when you leave high school going and working. Just volunteer. Go to a company that you want to work at, that you think is cool, that you think does the kind of work you want to do someday. And even if they're not hiring, just walk up to the door, put on your nicest clothes, and say, hey, I just graduated high school. I'm a really hard worker. I'm really smart. And I love your company. I want to get involved. I know you're not hiring right now, but I will work for free. I'll just be an intern. I'll do whatever you want. I'll volunteer. I just want to learn your business and become as smart as I can and become as helpful as I can to your company. I'll work for free for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, if you want to hire me for minimum wage, great, I'll do it. But I'll give you 6 months of my life for free just because I want to learn and I want to help you. I want to help make your company great. Will you do it? And see what they say. Because if you can just get on the ladder, because after 6 months of just doing menial stuff, even and following people around and asking interesting questions, you'll learn a ton. And then maybe for 6 more months, maybe you get on as some low-level employee. Maybe they have you doing some grunt work, but they're paying you now. Well, then you keep learning that. And you continue to ask questions and you keep hanging out with senior members of that company. And after a year, you've now had a year worth of experience. You've actually made a tiny bit of money, even if it's hardly anything. And that means you're 3 years ahead of your college classmates and you're not in debt. Like, your parents will let you. This is a good reason to stay living at home for a little while, okay? instead of moving out and living on your own, tell your parents, hey, instead of costing you $200,000 of college, if you let me just stay here for another year or two, I'm going to go start working and I'm going to learn everything I can about that industry. And then I'm going to save up as much money as I can. And then I'll move out and go on my way. And I will have saved you 4 years and $200,000. Your parents will say, absolutely, go get started. We will support you for another year or two. Great. I can't wait to see what you go try to do. That's what you could do. You want to learn accounting, marketing, something in design. Like, there's a million things you could do that don't take 4 years of college and $200,000 of debt. You don't have to do that. So this is the message that needs to get out to young people that they don't hear anywhere. So even if you're a school, okay, and this is what I'm going to get to as far as the mission and the point of education in a minute. The schools even need to be telling these students, hey, you know what? I'm really glad that you're interested in our university and we'd love to have you. But I think actually for what you want to do, you probably don't even need us. I think you could probably be pretty successful just getting started. And if you find that when you're out there that you still don't know enough and you need some extra, background knowledge, you need some extra mentorship from some professors, then come back and we'll be glad to accept you. But I think you're ready to just get started at a low level and work your way up, and you'll actually be just fine. You don't need us. That would be a great university. A great university would be one that tells kids the truth and says, yeah, we'd love to have you, but you don't need to come here. So save your money and go get started with your life, and we wish you the best of luck. We only really want students who truly want to be here because they really love the idea of this elite type of mentorship and apprenticeship on an intellectual level, or they truly need it for their future, career and licensing and all that stuff. But if that's not you, yeah, man, go for it. With a little hard work, you're going to be great, and we wish you luck. A real university would say that instead of trying to suck these students dry for every single penny they have and tell them everybody needs college when they don't. So we need to stop doing that. And you students out there, and you parents out there need to stop listening to the universities and the administrators and the politicians and whoever else is telling every single kid that they need college, because they don't. The article continues, what we're seeing is a widening schism between the undergraduate curriculum and the needs of the workplace. HR leaders are saying they need schools to take a bigger role in preparing tomorrow's employees. I'm going to touch on that here in a second. The survey, based on responses from 800 HR leaders and 800 recent graduates in the U.S., found that about 9 in 10 companies actively avoid hiring recent graduates, with many HR leaders opting for freelancers, retired employees, robots, or simply leaving positions unfilled versus taking a chance on an unproven professional. So this is what's happening out in the culture. The employers, the companies, are seeing that, yeah, you young people aren't very prepared anyway, so I'd rather just sub out a freelancer. I'd rather hire some old person for cheap who's already done this for 50 years and who just wants a part-time gig. I'd rather have a machine do it instead of you, or I'd be better off leaving it open and nobody does that work than have you come in and mess it up, okay? That's what many companies think about university graduates today. So you universities out there who think you're doing such a great job, the data is quite clear. You are not preparing students for the world. So what's happening is all these universities go, well, we just need to do more of it. We need more job training. We need more skills-based education. It's like, yeah, you've been doing that for 50 years. Okay. All this time you've been saying this is the way college should go. It should prepare our future workforce. And everyone is telling you, yeah, you guys suck at this. So, so you either need to get better or we need to figure out a different way of defining college. And that's what I'm going to do for you. So the idea that we keep just doubling down is foolish when this hasn't worked for a very long time and we got to do better at it. So therefore, college has to be more than just job training, okay? Job training is not a story that sells a 19-year-old kid. If you say, "Hey, come to our school and pay 150 grand and we'll train you for a job." They're starting to go, "Job training for 150 grand and 4 years of my life and my soul? I don't think I need that." And they're right. So we're going to start seeing enrollment decline because kids are starting to figure this out, thank goodness. And, that amount is just too costly. So the perspective of what college is has to be altered. You can't keep pushing the cliche that we're here to help you prepare for your career. Like, yeah, man, you can get that anywhere now. Why do I need you? So your school has to be about something else. It needs to be about something intrinsic and even more abstract, actually, and transcendental, something that's way more valuable than just career training. That's not interesting, okay? You can't win trying to sell that story. It just doesn't matter anymore. So we have to get away from this like utilitarian mindset and aim for something higher. I know that sounds old-fashioned, but that's truly what is needed here. So the thing that I've said on previous podcasts, and so I'll say it again with a little more depth here about education, is I talked about this about sports recently. So if you want to go watch my recent sports episode, please go do that. But I heard a quote, or I'll paraphrase it, on a podcast a while ago, and it kind of got distilled down to this key idea. A thing needs to be more than a thing if it's going to remain that thing. And so that can apply to anything. And in my previous video, I talked about a burger joint. Like a burger joint has to be something more than just selling you burgers, because ultimately someone's going to do it cheaper. Someone's going to do it in a way that the food tastes better. They're going to have nicer employees. Like someone's always going to beat you in that. In burger making, like there's probably no way you're going to win that unless you are something more special than that. And so I talk about how you can be a more special type of burger joint if you want to be that. But it applies to anything, and it definitely applies to education. A school needs to be more than a school if it's going to remain a school. And we keep hearing about all these universities that are closing their doors. And why is that? Is because the culture is looking at you going, "You're just a school? Oh, so what? I'm not interested." So you need to be more than a school. You need to have a story that can reach students, that make them believe that it's more than just taking tests and listening to lectures and going to football games and all that stuff. That's not necessary anymore. So what are you going to be? You have to be more than a school to even stay existing as a school. Now, there are many universities that have such a tradition and reputation that it's sort of built in, at least for now, and they're going to be fine for a while. If you're fifth generation Princeton grad, like Princeton means more than just a school. All right. It's family tradition. It's your identity in some way. It's part of your class and culture that you want to be a part of. There's something bigger than just, "Oh yeah, I sat in class for 4 years at Princeton." That's not how people who go to Ivy League schools don't think that way. Okay. At least some of them don't. And so that's why they're going to be fine, is because they've made themselves into something bigger than just school. Because there's thousands of schools. How are you different than any others? Well, they've made themselves into something special, something different. And I'm not saying they're perfect. Obviously, there's all sorts of problems at those schools, but at least they have a story to tell. They can say, "Hey, come be part of our tradition. This is where all the smartest people in American history have gone. This is, we're the university that produces presidents," and whatever their pitch is. They can make that pitch. And that's why generationally people are devoted to those schools, that their grandparents went there and their dad and mom go there and they go there and they're going to send their kids there because it's part of that family's story. Well, is your school part of a story? Well, if it's not, you're not going to stay in business as a school for very long. Now, the same thing sort of happens with sports. Sports uh, fans can be a little more fickle than those who are who are attending schools for intellectual reasons, where Alabama or Georgia or wherever these schools, Duke basketball, whatever, where people want to be a part of that school because there's something bigger than just the schooling part of it. They're like, yeah, I'm going to get my job training at Duke, but what I really want to be a part of is this basketball climate because it's so, you know, has such a long history, and I've loved it since I was a kid, and my dad liked watching it, and or the same thing with Alabama football or whatever it is. Again, it doesn't take long for those programs to start to stumble, and people might not want to be part of that story anymore. But while it's a good story, people still want to be a part of it because they're more than just an educational institution. You have to be about something bigger than that. And many schools try to do that. And for those of us who are part of the liberal arts tradition, and for me specifically part of the humanities tradition, these are the things that I've pitched to people for years as well. And they're valuable and they're real, but they're also not a strong enough story. So, the cliche things you see on flyers or on school pamphlets when you go visit them is, well, our education will make you a well-rounded person. You'll become an informed citizen. You'll be a lifelong learner if you get a degree from us. You'll get marketable skills and career preparation. You're preparing the workforce for the 21st century, or you'll be a leader in the culture. And while I agree with all those things, those are true things that a good education can provide. And again, I've been a part of it for 20 years, and I believe in those things. But at least right now, that's not enough. A 19-year-old has no interest in your pitch that says, well, if you come and get a liberal arts education at our state university, you're going to be a well-rounded person. They don't care about that. So you're not even understanding the mindset of a 19-year-old, or at least the right 19-year-old that you should want at your school. So you either need to truly believe in those things and go find students who also want to be lifelong learners, who also want to be leaders in the culture and actually believe that, and then fine, get them at your school. But you can't be telling that to every student because most students don't want those things. They don't care. And so these things aren't working anymore. So we need to change our approach to, away from the cliches and even away from the career preparation, because even though the kids think they want that, many don't want it from an academic standpoint, which again, that's why they should go get their career prep somewhere else. So the things we've been doing have led us to this place where schools are closing. There's huge distrust now in the culture from parents, from donors, from even the students themselves, where they're like, do I trust that school? Are they going to do something weird? Are they going to get too involved in politics, or are they even teaching the right things that these employers want? Am I actually going to be prepared for a job? Like, the students and the culture don't trust you anymore. So you have to have a different approach. And the willingness to shift is, needs to be on the table. So we have to think, okay, we've been saying that higher education is this thing. Again, informed citizen, well-rounded person, lifelong learner, career prep, all those things. We've been saying that. But we need to get to a better definition because, again, the students don't care about the previous definition. So we need to clarify what the definition actually is. Again, as I've said in other videos, even in my sports video recently, I'm a big fan of Plato and Aristotle because they were constantly trying to get to the definitions of things, even complicated ideas like love and truth and goodness and justice, these kinds of things that are, hard to wrap your brain around. They were trying to figure out, no, what exactly does that mean so that we can all understand it, and then we can try to aim for the best version of that. And we might think, or at least maybe in the past we thought that helping students become lifelong learners was the best definition of education, and I think there's a better one. We have to understand that education is actually very simple. Just a basic dictionary definition of education is something related to transmission of knowledge. That's all it is, okay? So then we have to go, well, transmission of knowledge for what? And again, these other universities have been, again, transmission of knowledge for career training, for lifelong learning, for whatever the liberal arts kind of traditional thing was. But that's not actually what the transmission of knowledge is for. There's actually a bigger telos than that. We have to be aiming at something else. and it's something that no one talks about enough. So we have to redefine what education is, and maybe we can take that definition, that clearer perspective, and actually get students on board with that, and then they'll actually agree with what the university is doing because they understand it better. They're clearer on what their goal is, and then they can use it for whatever they think they want in their life. But until we have that, these students are lost. They think college is one thing, and it's not. The definition of education is actually something else. And my idea for this comes a bit from some of the stuff from Jordan Peterson on chaos and order, as well as Ian McGilchrist's research into the two hemispheres of the brain. And so my idea is sort of like there are two components that we have to have. That education is truly about two very simple things. And it's two things that we never talk about. And it's, or we do, but it's sort of implied in these other things. No, they need to be super clear on this is what education is. All right, you ready for this definition? Here's what education is. It's fundamentally about two things that humans have to do to survive. Why do we transmit knowledge? For survival. That's why. Okay? Once we survive, then we can kind of do whatever other things we want to do. But we have to survive. So what do we have to do to survive? What is this knowledge that needs to be transmitted? Well, we have to remember the past and plan for the future. That's it. That is the definition of survival. And why we educate our children is so that they can remember things from the past that we know that work. So, hey, this works. Keep doing this because it'll keep you alive. But also, there are things that we don't quite know yet. And so we've got to figure out how to deal with certain problems of the future. We have to make plans for that. Those are the two things that education definitionally is and should be. And then everything builds off of that. So if we're skipping over that and just jumping to job training, like you're forgetting what the whole point of this is. Education is the transmission of knowledge. The transmission of knowledge for what? What's the telos? What's the ultimate goal for transmitting knowledge? Why do we do it? So that we can stay alive. So that our culture, our communities can stay alive. Okay, well, what do they need to stay alive? They need to remember the past and prepare for the future. That's it. So we need a bigger picture than just what has been offered recently and what universities are trying to do. They're trying to just regurgitate the same things. I just read an article, I don't know, a month or two ago from, I think it was in the MLA, about, especially in the field of English, like we need more skills training in English. English needs less content, more skills training. Like, yeah, you don't think we've been teaching skills all this time? That's not new, all right? And it's not something that's interesting to sell, so that's not a great idea. Even though I agree with it, that's not enough. There has to be more. I saw another article, I think it was in the Chronicle, that was about we need to develop majors that are interdisciplinary and like, yeah, because there's lots of people who want to study biology and theater at the same time. Like, what? No. First of all, that's not a new idea. You know, Duke University and other universities have been doing the interdisciplinary stuff for decades. All right, that's not new. And again, is that something that's really going to sell students on why I want to go to that school? Maybe a few, but if we want to educate the whole culture, like you say you do, we need to get back to the basics. What exactly is education? And so what is happening from Ian McGilchrist, I want to show you this quick clip where he's describing the real problem in education where your people, the administrators or the whoever's advising these people on how to fix their universities, you're just doing the same stuff because you're looking at it from a left brain perspective. And McGilchrist talks in his excellent books about, you know, it's not that the left brain and the right brain do different things. They all do everything. The left and the right do everything. The difference is the left brain does all those things in a different way. It has a different perspective. And the right brain does all those things in its own way with a different perspective. And what he claims throughout much of his research is, and relating it to the culture, is that we've become a left brain society. Everything is done with just do procedures. Just have, put things in categories, build systems, and then just replicate those. It's like, yeah, but what if those don't work? What if there's something we're missing here? What if we need to zoom out and see this from a broader perspective? That's where the right brain comes in. And That's how I tend to think. I think of things in terms of a big picture because I look at things from all different types of angles and what the ultimate goal is. And a lot of these administrators and other people leading these universities are only focused on the minutia of some system that if we can just get kids on this system, then everything will be fine. It's like, nope, you're missing the big picture. And so here's McGilchrist talking about that really quickly.
So the right hemisphere is aware that a thing and its opposite may actually both have validity. And that is extremely important. But the way we think now, which is very left hemisphere dominant, the left hemisphere goes, how can a thing and its opposite be compatible? No, absolutely not. It's either this or it's that. And the right hemisphere is much more both and, but it realizes the value of either or as well. So what we need is not either or both and, but we need both either or and both and. And the right hemisphere is able to do that. It sees what the left hemisphere is saying. It says, yes, that's a useful contribution. Now let me take that back into the big picture. But nowadays we never look at the big picture, where this is going historically, where it has come from historically, what the arguments against it are. And if you point out to managers in a system, and I've had experience of this in the two areas I know something about, hospitals and universities, if you point out that a certain, fashionable idea they've had, this is how we're going to do it, and the clinicians or the teachers, the lecturers say, well, that's not really how we do it, but no, this is how we have to do it. So it's done. After a while, one can see this is actually counterproductive. And then you point out to them, what we're doing here is counterproductive, which we thought it was. How about changing course? But you can guarantee they will never be big enough or broad-minded enough to say, that's a good point. Let's think differently. They will double down on what has already not worked, saying, but we just haven't done enough of it yet.
So what is this bigger picture? All right. I believe the university should be purposefully elite. All right. That students should want to be part of an institution because it's a special place and you're doing a special thing. That you're not just doing it to get prepared for a job. Because as I said, most people don't need to do that. So if you want to be at a college, you need to be there for a very different reason than just job training. Otherwise, you're not getting out of it what you think you are. And the school isn't preparing you in the best way that it could. So just like the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, just like chaos and order, we need a two-sided approach to what education is. As I said, it's about remembering the past and preparing for the future. So my proposal is that universities should be elite institutions where people actually want to go because they are passionate about one of two things, either remembering the past or preparing for the future. The remembering the past element has a preservation ethos. We have to remember things from our history, from our culture, where we came from, what we've learned, what we value, things that may be old but are still relevant today because they have some element of truth in them. They have some sort of beauty to them that they should not be forgotten. We have to keep them because they are part of what makes us stable and they are the traditions that help us function. I have really thought about this in the context of a TV show that I really like that used to be on Netflix. I don't know where it is now. I think you can actually find some of it on YouTube. But it was a show called The Repair Shop. It was this cute little British show about these people who were amazing craftsmen and like artists. And customers would bring them their torn, broken, faded, weathered, all the items from their homes that are falling apart. They needed repair. And so they go to these specialists who are really good at fixing stuff. And the show is amazing because these people would bring in these artifacts from their great-grandfather from the war, or, some piece of jewelry that was handed down from their great-grandmother, or, a toy that was their grandfather's, and then it became their father's, and then it became theirs, and now they're, grown-ups, but they want to pass it on to their kid, but it's all falling apart. And so, it's a little race car, or it's a little toy boat, or anything. Again, it could be something frivolous, or seemingly frivolous to an outsider, but to them it means so much because it's about their family, it's about England, it's about, again, the war, and it's about love and all these things. And they're represented in this item. Again, maybe it's a piece of furniture, maybe it's a piece of clothing, maybe it's a painting, maybe it's a tool that their great grandfather used when he built their home. Like, who knows? It could be anything. And these people are so good. They can fix all of it. It's incredible. And many episodes when the person comes back and they show them, hey, I fixed up your antique, your heirloom. And the people, a lot of times they break down in tears because they're so happy that this thing has been rescued that was so important to the generations prior. And now they get to have it again. And it brings back the memories of their family or whatever it was. And it's like, why does that make them and the viewers like get choked up? Why do we get teary watching that? Because things from the past matter. They still matter. Maybe not everything, things do need to be thrown away sometimes, but there are certain artifacts from history, whether they're actual tangible artifacts or music or Shakespearean or Greek drama or whatever it is, that we need to hang on to because they're part of who we are. That those things got passed down for numerous generations and have landed here, and they're part of us. And so we need to study what makes them so valuable, what makes them worth preserving, and how they can still be shared with the rest of the culture. We need to do a better job of taking the things of our past, revivifying them, and sharing them with the culture because they're still beautiful. I go, as I've said on this podcast numerous times, my wife and I go to the symphony several times a year. And sometimes we listen to very modern things. Sometimes we listen to traditional classical things. We listen to Beethoven and these amazing musicians and composers from the past. And we sit there in awe at how beautiful this music is. And they're performed by these insanely talented orchestra musicians. And, we all applaud, and we pay tons of money to go to these shows. Why? Because it's amazing. And it's part of who we are as a Western culture, that we play these things from Western Europe or from America or from elsewhere around the world. I mean, there's all sorts of shows you can go to that bring beauty into our lives and help us connect with our past. We need to study those things. That's what the traditional humanities normally do. That's history, philosophy, literature, things like this, theology. But what if instead of while you can still focus on those things in a university environment, what if the program you're a part of is the School of Preservation, where you go in knowing, hey, my goal while I'm here, this isn't just job training. Okay, I can go get job training anywhere. What I want to do here is learn about our history and come up with ways with my peers and with my mentors, these experts in the field, to continue to preserve these things, to make new discoveries of things that should be preserved. Maybe they've been forgotten and we need to bring them back. Maybe things we have been preserving, now that we look at them a little more closely, maybe they're not as good as we thought. Maybe we can push them back in the background a little bit. Like, we can have these discussions about what should be preserved, and then we can come up with ways to present them to the public. That is something that requires a bigger perspective than job training. Okay, you're caring about the culture. You're caring about what you believe in as an educated person. So for me, this is what I've done. I, as a literature scholar, this is what I've devoted my life to, is the preservation of these beautiful pieces of literature that are still truthful, still beautiful, still demonstrate the highest values of humanity. And I try to teach other people about them because I don't want them to be forgotten. And that's a valuable thing. Yeah, it's led to my career being a teacher, but even if I'm not a teacher, I would still care about these things, and I would figure out a way to still have my life be involved in this mission of preservation. So, this is something people should care about. And if I go to college knowing I'm on a mission to preserve the most beautiful and most truthful and most important things of our cultural history, like that's an exciting thing to be a part of, as opposed to I'm going to go get trained so I can be an accountant. Like, is that like that's fine. I have nothing wrong with people who want to do that, but like, you don't need college for that. You can do that in a variety of ways. So, um, could you do this preservation mission without college? Sure, you definitely could. But again, you're wanting to be a part of a community where we're all kicking around these ideas, we're all discovering new things and arguing and debating whether things should be preserved and all that stuff. That's a university can be a place where that all occurs. And so a TV show like The Repair Shop really hit home with me, because it's like, oh, this is what we should be doing with all of the culture. Find the things that should be preserved and then share them so that other people can have joy from them. Like, what a great thing. And again, we do it with our own family heirlooms. How about we do it with our cultural heirlooms so that all of us can be better for it? Not just the thing I passed down from my grandparents to me, to my kids, but the things that came from all of history down to the future of our nation. Like, that seems pretty important. So maybe a school of preservation would do that. I saw a quote from a philosopher, Robert Pippin, recently. He said, our main task now is preservationist. Maybe there's a 200, 400-year dark age coming, but if we can keep alive some residue of humanity in books and in the way we read books, great monuments to the human intellect and imagination, we'll be all right. So I completely believe that we're going to, at some point we're going to realize that all the fancy frivolity that we have around us, all the technology, all the silliness, all the trendy fad kinds of things that we go through, at some point we're going to go, yeah, what's the point of all this? Why does this matter? And we're going to get back to what truly matters, the things that have shaped who we are and that we should be sharing with each other. It also aligns with this quote that has become pretty popular in recent years. Tradition is a set of solutions for which we have forgotten the problems. Throw away the solution and you get the problem back. Sometimes the problem has mutated or disappeared. Often it is still there, as strong as it ever was. So this is why we have to have a preservation mentality for part of the university. Because if we forget the things of the past, if we forget that, hey, we've already solved some of these problems, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time, those problems are going to come back. And if we just listened to the great philosophers, to the great authors and playwrights and poets and historians and anthropologists and theologians, the people who have given us truth already, those traditions, those are answers. They're a set of solutions. And even if we don't remember what the problems even were, the problems will always reemerge. There's always going to be a problem. And if we've forgotten the solutions, we're going to have to deal with it and stress ourselves out about it going forward. When if we just said, hey, you know what? These experts over here, because they study preservation, they study the great ideas and works of our past, they already have some answers. Maybe we could listen to them. And now we can share it with the world. So, this kind of just goes back to the basics of Matthew Arnold, which I've devoted my life to sharing the best that's been thought and said in the world. That's the ultimate Matthew Arnold line. And that's what the arts and humanities were supposed to be. And we've kind of forgotten it and replaced it with, it's job training and it's skill development and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, if this stuff leads to skill development and job training, great, that's fine. But our goal could be higher than that it could be the preservation of our culture itself. It relies on us doing this having this mission. And that's pretty important. So what's the second element? If the first half is preservation, what's the second half? It's the opposite. It's innovation, because we need both. Again, the goal of education is to transmit knowledge for the purpose of survival. And surviving means remembering the past, planning for the future. So if we remember the past, that's half. But you can't always live in the past, because there are going to be new things that come up. So we have to plan for the future. So what if we had a school of innovation, and the students who go there, they could still have their majors, like innovation in biology, innovation in physics, innovation in chemistry, whatever this is, medicine, all those kinds of things. These are STEM fields more often than not. But that's their perspective. It's not, I need job training so that I can go work in this lab someday. No, it's, I'm going to this university so that I can learn to invent new stuff. I'm going to take my knowledge and my interest in chemistry, and I'm going to spend the next couple years working with these mentors, and we are going to try to figure out how to cure cancer. We're going to work on Alzheimer's. We're going to work on spinal cord injuries with, medicine we can give for spinal, like whatever it is. We are innovators. And every single day when I go to my classes, I'm thinking about what's new, what can I invent, what can I try out, what can I experiment. Everything is focused on innovation. That's your education. Every day, you and your professors, your mentors, are working on developing new stuff. Like, how exciting is that? That you now have something bigger than, yes, maybe that new invention you come up with is going to be a $1 billion product or industry someday. Fine, all the better. But your first mission is, I want to invent something new. I want to discover something new. I want to create something new. I go to the School of Innovation and my emphasis is biology. And this is what I work on every day. I'm innovating something brand new that's going to change the world. Fantastic. We need to focus these young people's minds on this higher goal. And again, I have been an advocate for the well-rounded education. I've been an advocate for the liberal arts where, you should probably take a variety of courses so that when you leave here, you've had some experience with literature, you've had some experience with science, you've had a little bit of math and a little bit of writing and history and all those kinds of things. Like, that's going to make you a better person, and it'll give you more flexibility in the workplace and all that stuff. I've been a full advocate of that. And I'm starting to rethink that maybe the best use of our time and energy in education at the college level is to take kids who only want to focus on this thing and then just like accelerate that and make it as intense of an experience as possible. And that's the focus. Is, again, I would like all students, I'd like a biology student to also understand some history and theology and literature and all those things too. But if it means that you get more excited about your own education and you're going to devote your whole being, if it's biology, to innovating some new idea in the health world, I'd rather you do that, to be honest. So these are the paths that students could take. I want to be someone who preserves the culture, and I'm going to devote all of my energy to coming up with ways to understand our culture, the past, and make sure that we implement it in ways where it's not forgotten. And these students are spending all their time innovating brand new stuff. And that's what you focus on all the time. Now, the key to this is that, does this need to be 4 years? I would say no. It almost turns into a situation where this is almost like a master's program. Maybe this is just 2 years of really, really elite, intense, high-level study. This is not normal college right now where you're just rehashing what you did in high school, because that's what college is. It's just high school all over again. Okay? Maybe by the time you're a senior, you're doing something a little more challenging, but it's just not. College is so easy, and we have to make it more elite. And so if we have these domains where students choose and they want to devote the next 2 years of incredibly intense study to these things, think of the productivity we could get out of these students where, again, every day they've been mentored by experts, people who've already gone through this, and develop these ideas that are truly cultural ideas and culture saving and culture transforming ideas. That's a better way to put it. Other than, let's crank out another business major. Like, what? Why are we doing that? So that's a big idea, okay? That the university could be like a brain where, again, the brain doesn't just have these separate tasks. It literally views the world differently from each half. And that's a way we could adapt that idea, that concept of our biology to the university. That in this half of the university, we're gonna view the world in one way, and this half we're gonna view the world the other way. Now, here's the twist, because you might be thinking, well, wait a second. Maybe having these students be so isolated is not the best thing. Maybe, you're going to need to work together at some point. And that's another idea I have, which is, what if for your, whatever you'd call your senior year, like your last semester or maybe it's a year, I don't know, however long it takes, you have your course, like a capstone course or your senior project, or it doesn't have to be a course, maybe it could just be a project, is your task in order to graduate from our university is to team up with another student from the other half of the brain, so to speak. Okay, so if you're in the preservation part of the school, you need to form a partnership with a person in the innovation part of the school. And your job is to integrate those two ideas and come up with something. Could be a business idea, could just be a cultural product that you have developed, some sort of program that can be shared with other people, maybe something that could be taught to kids, like whatever. It just needs to combine both domains. And maybe it doesn't have to be one-on-one. Maybe you could have two from one and two from another. You could do a little group project, but it has to be like evenly balanced. So you're forced by the end of your schooling that, yes, you have all this background now in preservation, or you've been innovating all these things, but you can't forget the other side, because just like the two parts of the brain, they have to work together. So your mission is you have to develop something that respects and implements the preservation side, but is also new and creative on the innovative side. And it becomes a new thing. And now you've got students who are intensely focused on their specific, kind of mission, but they're also getting exposure to the other side without having to take 4 years of a bunch of coursework that the students don't actually care about. Because we've been trying to get them to do that. That's what the liberal arts are for. Like, you take a little bit of each of these are your gen ed requirements, and then you take your major courses and you spend a year and a half on your major. But, we don't need you to take 2.5 years of gen eds anymore. Like, what if you just had a big project, or you spend, a semester, or maybe it's a whole year working on this task, where that's your focus. You get to know the other side. You don't need a whole bunch of coursework about it, but your relationship with the person who's from the other domain, you have to talk things through, and you have a mentor, just like a dissertation advisor or a thesis advisor, who is making sure that, you're working equally and both sides are represented, and it doesn't just become an innovation project and you kind of leave behind the preservation side. Like, nope, they have to go together because they're both equally important. And this is what helps the culture, to have a memory of the old, but also an incorporation of the new. They have to go together. And that's your ultimate project. And then from there, whatever career you want to pursue, that's fine. But now if you go into the sciences, now you can go to someone and go, hey man, I just spent the last 2 years working in this lab where we invented all sorts of cool stuff. I have all sorts of ideas that I can bring to your company. Well, that makes you pretty marketable, I would say. Instead of saying, yeah, I graduated with a degree in biochem. Okay, so did all these other 100 people. What makes you so special? Well, I got a 3.8 in my degree. Yeah, so did all these other 100 people. What makes you special? Saying I devoted 2 years to working under this mentor, like you would in a master's or a PhD program, to be not only an expert in it, but to innovate brand new things that could change the world. Like, yeah, doesn't that give you a leg up? Isn't that better career preparation if that's where this goes? Or same thing on the preservation side. If you're like, well, I was a music major, or I was a art major or something like that. It's like, okay, that's fine. But then you can explain to people, yeah, I spent 2 intense years learning about this music from the past and building these programs where I take these things to schools, and I've held these concerts, and I've been able to bring in all these people, and now they're sharing this music tradition with other people, like whatever that is. Or if it's literature, yeah, I've been reading classic literature for 2 years, but what I've also been doing is presenting these things to people in a way that they haven't thought of before, that exposes these people to these beautiful artworks or music works or literary works. And I'm changing this town with my ideas, like whatever it is. Now you have something tangible that you've actually been working on, instead of just saying, yeah, I got my diploma. Yeah, so does everyone else. Again, getting your diploma for career preparation isn't a story that is interesting anymore. So you have to think bigger. Well, this is an idea that thinks bigger. So that's my big idea. Now, it's not all though. I also believe that maybe there is a way for job training to be part of this. Okay. So I'm not forgetting about that. So I'm willing to compromise, even though I don't think most of this is needed. I am going to assume that maybe there are some young people who think, yeah, I could go just get started in a certain career, but I kind of do want to be around people my age, and I do want to be able to have access to professors and really smart people who have studied this for many years. And I think that would give me a certain insight into these industries that is the job training part of it, but also has a more intense academic element to it. And I actually want to be a part of that. I want to do the readings. I want to have these discussions. I would like to write papers about these, business plans or education theories or whatever. Like, I want the academic part of the job training, because most students don't. When you ask students, why are you going to college? Oh, to get prepared for this job I want. It's like, yeah, but I know you don't care about the academic part. So why don't you just go start the job you want? This would allow for students to actually incorporate both. So I think there is a third element here, a third hemisphere, what a trisphere, I don't even know what it would be. But there's a third component of the university that could work. And so your university could have just one. You could just be a university on preservation. You could be just a university on innovation. You could be just a university, and this is what I would prefer actually, a university that's just for job training. Okay, certain careers that you think need training, this is what your university does, and that's it. Again, it doesn't need 4 years. You don't need $150,000. You're just getting training in that. It's like what I've always heard, like when people say, oh, I went to business school or, night business school. I've always been like, well, what is that exactly? Well, maybe it's just a year's worth of those business classes to get you familiar with those industries. And you don't need all the other stuff. You don't need to take the composition class and the basic science class and all that stuff. Like, just take the career prep stuff. That's fine. So you can have that as a separate institution, or if you're careful, you could have all three of these as the kind of the different fields or the domains of your university. They just need to be distinct so that you're the School of Preservation, you're at the School of Innovation, or in this case, you're the School of Vocation. So there's three ways that you could attend a university. So what would the vocation stuff be? Well, these are the professional fields. This is business. This is lower level education, lower level nursing, things there like you need some training and helps to get some background before you just dive into stuff. That's fine. If you want to go to those types of programs, that can certainly work. So I haven't forgotten about that. I'm not saying, oh, the university should never be job training. I'm just saying the university should only be job training for certain types of fields. And those traditionally have been called the professional fields. They're not academic fields. And again, you mostly don't need those. Again, some might need some licensing. Again, like if you're going to be a school teacher, you might need some of that. But for other fields that are professional, you don't need that stuff. I have nothing against business majors. I have friends who have MBAs. I'm friends with business professors. I respect all that stuff. That's fine. But we don't need more business majors, okay? The world has too many of them already. I've told you this before, but I used to run a little test with my students because I could tell they didn't actually care about business. And I'm not joking. Over the years, when I would sometimes run this experiment, half of the students in my class who were business majors couldn't spell the word business properly. So I was like, you don't care about business. You don't even know the word business. So, of course, they didn't like reading. They didn't like writing papers and doing the math for certain business classes. They just said, oh, I'll just study business. So we need to take those students. They shouldn't be in college in the first place. Or if they do want to be in college, they need to be in the School of Vocation, where they learn those very specific business tasks if they want to. But again, this has to be elite level stuff. These have to be very bright students who actually care about the academic side of business, not just, I need a diploma, so I guess I'll study business. Because that's 90% of the kids I've met in my 20 years in universities. They don't care about it. And so I'd always tell them, like, why don't you just go start working? Like I said at the beginning of this episode, just get started. Work for free for 6 months. Go learn that industry, and you'll be way ahead of everyone else. Like, well, but someone told me I needed a degree. No, you don't. We don't need more business majors. Only be a business major if you actually want to study, read, learn, write, create things related to business. If you just want to get a job, go get a job. This is not for you, this university model. So this is what I'm talking about. This is a different way of approaching the university. I know it's reductive. I know it's simplistic. I know you might be thinking, well, how do you even implement this? This doesn't sound feasible. That's fine. I would love feedback. I'd love someone else to take this idea and run with it in a a more nuanced way. Again, I'm a big picture person. I'm a right brain person. I see things very broadly. This is also why, as McGilchrist said when he briefly touched on education, this is why administrators usually don't have the first idea of what they're talking about, is because administrators, the whole point of administering is to have a left brain mentality. Your job is to be like, we need to implement this program so that it has these inputs that create these outputs, and you focus and you see students as numbers on a spreadsheet. You're like, we need this many students to have this much revenue, so let's do this program because that's a system that will take this input and lead this output. Like, so those of us who don't think that way, who see the school much more broadly, we're always like going, yeah, man, that doesn't work. Because there's all these other problems that are going to pop up because you don't understand students. You don't understand the classroom. You don't understand my field. You don't understand instructional pedagogy. There's a million things you don't understand. All you're looking at is, we need to create revenue, so let's do this. We need to get more students, so let's have this. Let's focus on growth. And like, yeah, you're ruining everything because all you're looking at is from a left brain, you're looking for something you can just repeat. Because that's what the left brain does. Put it in a category and repeat it. That's that. Whereas the right brain folks are going, wait a second. We need to have a much broader picture of what we're doing here. So for example, as a teacher at the university level, I need to think of, you might think, oh, well, I'm just an English teacher, so I just care about teaching my English classes. Like, no, everything I do, I have to think about from a perspective of my field of English, which is tied to Western cultural history. Okay. I need to think of it in terms of my field. I need to think of it in terms of the level I'm at. So if I'm at the university level, like, okay, well, what does university level English teaching look like? I need to think of it in terms of the school I'm at. Like, well, what's the ethos of our school? And how can I take the elements of my field and focus them and apply them in the way that my school wants? And, so I'm agreeing with all the other things that are going on here. I have to look at it from my department. So as a department chair, like I have to think at all these levels. I have to think of it in terms of all the other English classes that are just like mine, but I don't teach. So, we don't want to have me teaching one thing one way, but then another teacher completely refuting that idea. Like, we need to be on the same page in our department. And then I need to think about all of my individual classes. So I may teach 4 classes of that content area, but all 4 of those are slightly different because they have different students in them. So I got to negotiate that. And then I got to focus on each individual class and the 30 kids that are all different in that class. And then I got to focus on each individual student in that class and see if I can help that kid learn something. Like, I need to think about English teaching at 20 different levels. And these administrators think of it on, oh, we just need a system to put in place so that we get this output. Like, that's the problem. You're a left brain person. The rest of us are right brain people. We have to think about the big picture here. And so that's where a lot of the conflict comes in. So this is why we're having this problem in education. It's that the methods we're using to try to deal with these problems are often left brain types of solutions. And it's like, yeah, we've been trying that. That doesn't work because you're not seeing the big picture. You need something that zooms out and gets a different perspective on all these problems. And then once we can kind of agree on that and figure out, okay, here's actually what we're doing, okay, then we can drill down and get into the details. But when all you're doing is focusing on details, you're going to miss all the other things and all the other contexts that are so valuable. And I think this addresses that because it allows for the different segments: preservation, innovation, and vocation. It allows for them to be viewed broadly, but it also allows for opportunities for intersection. And even that last one, the vocation, can be intersected with those other 2 as well. You could have 3 people, 1, 2, 3 individuals all working on their senior project, where now you take your preservation idea, you take, or your historical context, you take your innovation idea and you make a business out of it, or you figure out a way to apply it in the classroom or something, could be vocational. All that can work. But it's much more focused from an education standpoint. Like, what are we teaching these kids, and do these kids want to learn what we're teaching them? And do they even care? Are we being honest with them? And right now we're mostly not. So let me show you how this all looks on a chart so that we can be a little more detail oriented and how all of these fit together. So let me show you how I break all these down. All right. So from the preservation standpoint, here's what fields we're talking about. Traditionally, we're talking about the humanities and social sciences. So where would we find people once they've studied this preservation method of learning? Well, where does this exist? Well, museums, libraries, symphonies and orchestras, like I said, classic film and radio, debates, documents, again, preservation stuff as far as maintaining them and referring back to them, law, upper education, even counseling and journalism are really about preservation. You're trying to make sure you understand the things of the past and what worked with clients, for example, or in journalism, like that there are rules you follow, that you need to abide by certain ethics, and people have done these things this way in the past, and that's what makes it legitimate, and all those things. So these are just a variety of ways of implementing the preservation mindset in the culture. So what's the purpose of this? To reveal and maintain the best of human lives in the past. All right, it's to uncover, to remember, and then maintain them so we don't forget them. Why does this matter? The goal here is to clarify human nature, to make sure we understand who we are as people, where we came from, why we do the things we do, so that, maybe we can not make so many mistakes and we can understand ourselves better. So how do we do this? In the preservation mode, we learn from successes and mistakes of the past. So that's why we explore our cultural history, is we're trying to learn from what they did right and from what they did wrong. That's why we need to remember those. So again, just like the traditions quote, what problems did they already solve? And what problems did they make for themselves? We need to know both sides of those things. And then what values are demonstrated in the preservation format of schooling? The traditional, kind of original Aristotelian ideas, truth and Platonic ideas, truth, beauty, goodness, justice. In Aristotelian terms, a life of flourishing based on meaningful knowledge. So sifting through the past, figuring out, okay, these things were good, these things were not so good, we can get rid of those because they weren't that helpful. But we need the meaning. We need to hang on to the meaning so that we have something to build on going forward. So each of these, I always, when I'm teaching something, I try to use these kind of like who, what, where, why kinds of outlines, because it just helps us remember, like, what's the point of all this, and how do we do this exactly? Like, this isn't random. Like, I've had to think through these ideas, and they each need to follow certain phrasing. And so you're going to see when I go to the next one that these ideas here are repeated just in their own way for the innovation level. So same thing. What fields are we talking about in innovation? Well, probably STEM. I'm not saying those are the only ones, but traditionally that's what we would be talking about. Where do these people exist? Well, people who do innovative things are usually in labs. They're in places where you do a lot of experimentation and exploration. So this would be space or underwater, like wherever you're doing exploration, that would be part of this field. Building and designing could be part of this. Medicine, of course. Again, these are just a few examples, but that's where these people do what they do. So what's the purpose of this field of study? To create better lives for humans in the present and the future. So remember, the past, or the preservation one, was to understand those people of the past and then hold on to what worked. This is not about the past. It's about creating better lives for the present and the future. So it's forward looking, but we need both. Why does this matter? Well, our goal is to develop human nature. Remember, the preservation was to clarify it so that we understand human nature, because if we just have random ideas, well, if we don't understand human nature, those ideas aren't going to work. So we need to have the background, and then we take those ideas, and now in the innovative type of schooling, we develop them, we add to them, we increase them. How do we do it? Well, the learning style in the innovative school is to have trial and error. That's experimentation. We're going to try stuff. We have ideas. We're going to put them to the test and see what works. So that's the methodology that would take place in the innovative schooling. What are the values of this type of schooling? Well, better health, efficiency, productivity, more learning, anything that's trying to make our lives, our culture better in some way. Again, we need to know what better means. That's why we need to talk to the preservation people. But, from just a productivity standpoint, this is what that means. And again, back to Aristotle, a life of flourishing based on accessible knowledge. All right, so that we all have access to these things. So if someone in the innovative department comes up with, again, a new medicine, well, now the rest of us can have access to it. You're sharing it with other people. So you're making things accessible to people. You're making work accessible. You're making health accessible, even education. If you're developing some tech platform, you're doing things, you're creating new stuff so that it gets spread as an ultimate value for the culture. Now, here's something else we got to cover. The reason there's this two brain mentality, or like Peterson talks about, chaos and order, is because there's two sides to it. And so this is sort of like our Tao situation here, our symbol. But within, remember in the Taoist philosophy, within each side, there is an element of the opposing side. And so I've outlined here preservation isn't just preservation. There's always going to be an element that would be covered in these types of courses or in these types of mentor relationships, where there is also an element of creativity and adaptability. It's not ossified. It's not stuck in the past. There's always going to have to be something adaptable. And on the other side, the innovative side isn't just constant, free-flowing, brand new stuff. All of that stuff is based on stability and procedural and background knowledge. Like, even the scientific method is the procedural knowledge that all the innovation is based on. Well, that's part of preservation. It's something we've been doing for hundreds of years. So in each element, it's not like you're ignoring the other side. There's always an element of the opposition within. So for example, in the preservation mode, as an English professor, there's lots of debate all the time on the canon. Okay, so protecting the canon would certainly be part of preservation. And so we have to discuss, well, what should be in the canon and why, and, is this author better than this author? And those are the things we would discuss. But there also is an element of creativity and adaptability because, one, new literature is always being written. And so maybe the new stuff needs to be considered to be canonical to a certain degree. Also, have we missed something in the past? Should we be looking again at different authors that weren't included previously? And now that we look at them more closely, we go, wait a second, those people are great. Those should be canonical authors too. They've been sort of marginalized or pushed to the side for too long. Maybe we should include them in the canon. So many people think, from a political standpoint that, when it comes to English, the canon, that's just these old white guys. And you just don't like diverse authors, or you don't like women or any of this stuff. It's like, no, that's part of the adaptability of a program like this and this is what the mindset of a true English person should be, which is, yes, we're trying to protect the past and the greatest things that we've built over our many centuries. But there's also an openness that maybe there's something we missed. We should go back and take another look to make sure we didn't miss an author that should be included here. And again, there could be new authors that are adding things that are truly valuable, that will be long lasting and helpful to our culture. There is an element of the new and the creative that has to be adapted in order to preserve things. And so it's always part of it. So again, you can't come up with, new medicines if you don't know the basics of biology and how humans work and what chemicals would be good for humans and what chemicals would kill humans and all that stuff. Like, you have to have background knowledge. It's always part of it. In order to do innovative things, you have to know something before. And in order to save things, you have to be flexible enough to recognize that there might be new things that need to be saved as well. So having an image like this, again, and it's why McGilchrist and Peterson have kind of really influenced my way of thinking about how education should be framed. This is ultimately what we're talking about, is that there's these two sides, and they both have elements of the other within them. And as I said, you could even come up with a way to fully integrate them as a final project or a senior capstone kind of situation, so that these two ideas aren't completely isolated with one another. Lastly, we have vocation, and the trades would be the non-college version of this. So what fields? Again, professional fields, whatever those might be, accounting and marketing and all those things that are in business, as well as these other fields. Where do these people exist? Well, they're in the non-experimental sciences. So these would be people who, work in labs, but don't necessarily need too much background in medicine. They're the people who do blood tests and, low-level nurses and things like that. The practical arts, this could be like graphic design, interior design, things that are artistic, but are also kind of professional. And then, of course, places of exchange. This is the business world. What's the purpose? Well, why do these people do what they do? They're trying to accomplish tasks through products or services. Okay, so this is task oriented. The other two are a bit more philosophically oriented. Preservation and innovation, you're kind of working in the abstract. This is about tasks. We need things to be accomplished for our lives. Why does this matter? Again, we clarified human nature. We're trying to develop human nature, and vocations are here to serve human nature. This is why we make products or services to help people. This is a service part of the culture. How do we do this? Well, you do it through practice. And so if you're going to have an education environment, if you go to a school for accounting, you just need to practice accounting a ton. If you're going to go to a school for nursing, you just need to do a ton of nursing stuff. Elementary education, you need to practice getting in front of kids and teaching them things and practicing your various pedagogies. It's just repetition and practice. That's how you become good at these things. So the values, well, helping others, that's important. Societal operations, making sure things function properly, that we can trade with one another, we can get our test results, all that kind of stuff. And a life of flourishing, again, back to Aristotle, based on functional knowledge, of labor, daily logistics. Like, we've got to get work done to make sure we have roads and clean water and stores and groceries and all that stuff. So those are valuable. They're not as, they're not like truth and beauty, but they are still valuable for our culture. And what I've done is I've developed a way to look at all three at the same time. I can't get my head out of the way here. And so I've broken up into this chart that maybe is helpful so that you can see how I've integrated, the locations of where these people operate, the purpose, sort of this objective, this two phrasing here, and influence on humans' lives. The why it matters. It's always about human nature. This is, again, back to the point of education. It's, well, what is human nature? It's survival. And how do you survive? You got to remember stuff from the past and learn new stuff for the future. So it's about human nature, and these three areas pertain to that. How do we do it? I've discussed those. Each school, you would be studying these things. You go to the preservation school to study the mistakes and the successes. You go to the innovation school to study the through trial and error, and you practice things in the other one. And the values are all listed as well, because again, we have to have a higher goal than just job training. We have to have a higher goal than just, I need to take some tests and I need to get this piece of paper that has my name on it, and therefore I'm now an educated person. No, there's way more to it than that. And so here's a chart that people can use to, if you want to borrow from it or use this in any way, please let me know and I can talk to you about it further. All right, so there's my big idea of how universities could reframe their intentions, get back to a better definition of what education is, and maybe students would be more on board with that, because then we'd be honest with students and say, look, here's what our emphasis is in this program that we do. And if you want to be a part of it, great. If you don't, that's fine. Because after all, we're telling you actually don't need college for that many things. So we just want the students who are genuinely interested in being here and being great. And we're going to create this elite environment where really the best of the best, or at least the most diligent of the most diligent, who want to come. Because if you don't care about this, you shouldn't be here. And this would help focus students and the schools, I think, a bit more. Now, just to tie all this together, this is why K through 12 is so important. Students must have the basics of all of these things if they're ever going to be admitted to a university environment. You have to know basic biology and chemistry if you're going to go work in the innovation program. You have to know that stuff already. You have to have a basic foundation of literary history if you're going to be able to assess the canon or to do research on these authors and argue about how great their work is and then show them to other people. Whatever it is, the university, if it's going to operate at an elite level, can't be reteaching you the same stuff you should have already had in high school. So some of this is incumbent upon the K through 12 system, and I know that's a disaster right now. But University of Austin is doing a great thing right now where they're just focusing on testing. They don't care about any of the other stuff for students of what silly, extra things you're a part of. Like, not that they're silly, but the fact that people only do them to put on a resume or an application is silly. Because they think it improves their chances of getting into a school. University of Austin is saying, we don't care about any of that stuff. We just want to know, are you smart enough to be here? And if you are, they have levels, then you're in. Like, that's all they care about is excellence. So be excellent. And, hopefully our K through 12 teachers are making kids excellent. Right now, they're not. And that failure is across everybody. It's everyone's fault. It's the student's fault, at least after several years in, where students can kind of make their own decisions about how they're behaving during the day. The students themselves don't put in the work. They don't care. They don't listen. They don't read. That's on them to a certain degree. If you're 16 years old and you're not doing your homework, or you're not listening in class, and you don't care about these things your teachers are teaching you, that's on you. That's not the teacher's fault. Now, sometimes things are the teacher's fault. There's lots of bad teachers out there. I've seen them. They don't know their content well enough. They don't have good methods for teaching. They're just not good teachers. They don't care about their field and the kids. Like there's bad teaching everywhere. So we've got to fix that. It's parents. Parents are one of the bigger problems here, because if you're under 18, like, your parent's still responsible for you. So parents don't push their kids hard enough. There's no consequences. If they're goofing around at school, the parents end up taking the kid's side instead of the school's side. Parents are a huge problem, and administrators are a problem, because they oversee all this, and they usually don't know enough about teaching, and or they haven't been in a classroom in 20 years, or they just moved up because they wanted more money. They don't actually care about kids and learning and scholarship and any of that stuff. And they're overseeing schools where they're just so desperate to not lose kids, not have them drop out or not have them transfer, that they'll just let anything go. So it's all of them. It's students, it's parents, it's teachers, it's administrators. Everything is wrong with the K2 through 12 system. And so that's the next thing that needs to be fixed. But if we're going to fix college, this is actually way easier to fix, because you can just say no to people. You can just not let them in, because if they're not qualified at the standards that are required to be at this elite level, where we're going to entrust you to already have all the basics, you've already passed these difficult tests that show that you're really smart, that you're going to go develop brand new things in engineering, in medicine, in physics, in space travel. Like, you better be super smart and super committed to what we're doing here. Because if you're not, take a hike. That's on you, man. And so it's easier to fix this at the college level, because they can be more selective in who they let in. If in the preservation side, like, you don't really like reading, get out of here. You're not qualified for this school. We read a ton. We study history a ton. If you don't like those things, you're not in. If you're not really talented at those things, you can't write, you're out. You're not creative and analytical. No, you can't be here. So again, University of Austin is attempting to do that. The Ivy League schools pretend they do, but they don't. They have all sorts of other reasons for admitting students. But, again, the K through 12 is a separate problem. But what should be happening at the K through 12, if they were to actually improve, is they actually need to be doing all of it. For those 13 years of K through 12, they need to be teaching this. And this is what education should already be, but it's not. But again, there needs to be a refocus. Teachers at every level, from 3rd grade to 8th grade through 12th grade, whatever it is, should be teaching. We are teaching preservation here. The reason we're teaching The Great Gatsby is because it's a book that needs to be preserved. It's an author that needs to be remembered, because the themes in it and the beauty of the writing should be something that we can all keep revisiting and enjoying and learning about ourselves and about American culture for years to come. We need to hold on to this. We can't forget this. You can't be going out into the world and not knowing at least something about this book. We need to save this book. Okay. So that's how everything should be. Your history classes, you're not just learning names and dates. You're learning why we have to hold on to these memories. And in your other classes, like science and chemistry and physics and whatever else, computer classes, you're training these students so that they have the background knowledge, so that they are prepared to start building those creative juices to go into an innovative program. And so that we don't have to reteach you all these basics, because by the time you're there, you're wasting everyone's time. If you can't do the basics, why are you here? Okay? So it has to be more than about graduating from high school and getting a diploma and then going to college to get job training and getting a diploma. Like, we have to have higher goals than that. And thirdly, if you want to follow all three of my domains, students need to graduate at 18 or whenever they want to leave school, qualified enough to go get a basic job. Qualified enough to then go knock on a door at a business and say, hey, I was a pretty good high school student. I'm pretty smart on things that your business does. let me show you. I'll work for free for 6 months. I'll intern or whatever you want, a volunteer. I don't care what you call me, but I'll show up here every day. I'll be here at 6 a.m. I'll stay till 10 p.m. I'll do whatever you want so I can keep learning. But I'm really interested in this. I'm a hard worker. And after 6 months, if you don't like me, you can kick me out and you'll never see me again. But I think I could do some good work for you. The kid who graduates high school needs to be that kind of kid. So that if they don't want to go to college, they don't want to spend 4 years and 200 grand of their life, they can go do that and feel confident that they have something to offer at any type of business. You want to go be an accountant? You want to go get into marketing? You want to go into something with technology? You've learned enough in your K through 12 that you're actually qualified to get on that lowest level of employment and start building your life from there. And then for everyone else who wants to keep learning and keep going into the academic process, those are the ones who go to college. But everyone else, by the time they're 18, they can be ready to go be self-sufficient and take care of themselves in the working world. So, you know, teachers need to do everything. They need to be preservationists. They need to be preparing people to be innovators, and they need to be focused on vocation. They need to be job preparers. So it's very important that we have really good teachers at the K through 12 because they have to do all of it. And then at the college level, they should be honing those things in those specific domains. And like I said, by then, because if you're already that qualified and we're only going to focus on those domains, college can now only be, let's say it's 2 years, maybe it's 1 year. I don't know, however fast you can get through all this stuff. But again, like a master's program, maybe it's just 2 years. Maybe it's, it's 12 courses or something. And that's all you focus on is your domain and your focus. And then you're ready to do whatever else you want to do. Go invent something else and, go work, go create something, build your own business, like whatever you want to do. You now have the very focused practice at doing that. Another thing, there's a lot of discussion about, especially with some of the federal education stuff going on right now, that everyone talks about money and funding of these schools. Now, I'm against public funding. I don't think my tax dollars should be confiscated from me to go give to kids who don't care about education. Like, that's a waste of money and it's theft from me. So I do not like federal funding for these kinds of things. But again, I'm willing to compromise. If there is some version, and you could do this at the state level, because then at least the people in the state can decide how much they want to allocate to these things through their state taxes. But even if we want to do it at the federal level, whatever, if we are going to improve education and make it a truly cultural entity, not just job preparation, because again, you can get that anywhere. You don't need a university for that. If we're going to make this a truly cultural institution that needs to be respected, protected, and contributed to, the other factor that needs to come into play here is any dollars that go into a public funding, again, either federal or state, need to be allocated evenly among those three domains: preservation, innovation, vocation. You can't have schools that are making, that we keep open and only focus on the scientific research side of it. I'm not saying valuable things don't happen from there. Of course, they certainly do. But it also completely undermines the other elements of your school and thereby undermining the vital elements of our culture. Because again, we don't have a culture. We don't survive ourselves if we don't have those things. If we don't have preservation and innovation. And then if you want vocation, that's fine too. But you can't just take dollars and go, we're going to take that money and fund our science labs and our physics department or whatever, or, our AI development and tech stuff. Like, that's not okay. You can use part of it, but you can't just take public resources and only donate those things to one segment of the university, because the university is for all of culture. And so each one needs to get whatever dollars are allocated in a fair manner. So that's something that many people won't like because they think, again, the job training, skill stuff, or scientific innovation are the only important things, and they're not. They're all equally important. So they need to be treated that way through funding. And so with all the talk about money, which I always hate because I didn't get into this for money, okay? And I always get so angry at these administrators who keep negotiating their exorbitant salaries. When it's like, yeah, the rest of us didn't get in it for the salary. We knew that going in. I knew that being first an elementary school teacher and then becoming a college professor and a literary scholar and all these things that I've become, I'm not doing this for the money. I'd like a higher salary, but I also know I'm doing this for a larger goal. It's to preserve the culture and to help get kids on their path in life. And I see these people in education who, they make many, many, many times what the rest of us do. And then they're the ones also complaining they're not getting enough funding. So in a model like mine, where students only go for a year to 2 years and the domains are rather limited and any funding that comes in has to be distributed evenly, yeah, this is going to hurt, some of the revenue for universities. And I think that's fine. We don't need the extra waste at these universities for things that kids don't care about. And I think it would probably streamline a lot of the administration because these administrators are doing things no one cares about. All right. It's stunning to me that these people can be operating these institutions and not operating them right, and yet they're millionaires. I don't understand that. And we have to change that mindset. Again, not that we work for free. This is our services should be compensated, but these administrators do not think of education the way that teachers and scholars do, and that needs to change. And this is one way that maybe we could, by shifting the focus and shifting the time and helping students not be in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt and helping them get on to their lives earlier, maybe that would trim some of the fat out of the university. I'd love to see that. But if you care about the culture, you can't say that you only care about one thing. You can't just say, oh, science and technology, this is the way of the future. It's like, yeah, half the future. But the other half is we got to preserve some things that are truly valuable from the past. And we can't just do one and not the other. And we can't live in the past without recognizing we need things for the future. They're both equally valuable. And so you can't say you care about education or care about the culture and only focus on one of those things as an institution or as a leader of these institutions. So they all matter. So again, just to finish, I just think of the productivity that could be unleashed if students just focused intently on their domain for 2 years and had that as their life mission as they entered the world. Like, these would be young people that would be excited about truly making a contribution to the culture because they have an ethos behind them. Their ethos isn't, oh, I need to go get a job in marketing. Like, no, you don't. That's not something that drives your life. Okay, that's a job. And again, to get to Aristotelian here, but like, if you're going to have a flourishing life where you truly understand yourself and you truly understand your community and you understand the broader culture of who we are, where we came from, where we're going, you can't just think, I need to go spend 150 grand to go learn about marketing and get my diploma. That's not a story that people care about. Whereas saying, that's like saying, I want to be a nurse so I can learn how to take blood pressure. Yeah, that's the job. I want to go be a nurse so I can learn how to draw blood from people. Yeah, those are the tasks you do in your job, but that's not why you do it. You do it because you want to help people. You want to serve people. You want to maybe save someone's life. That's why you become a nurse. Okay? I become a teacher because I'm trying to preserve the best that's been thought and said from our culture and pass that wisdom on to young people. Okay? Yes, it's a job, but that's not my mission isn't my job. My mission is I would do that anyway. Even if I weren't, in a formal school setting. That's what I do because that's what I care about. And that's what I think is valuable for the culture, not just for job training. Okay, I don't teach kids things so they can go get a marketing degree. I teach them so that they're good human beings so they can sustain and improve and serve the culture. And think of what productivity can be unleashed if we narrowed their focus down, trimmed those years, slashed the enrollment fees because they only need to be there for a year or two instead of 4, got rid of the administrative bloat. Like, I think education would be in a much better place. And so this whole plan that I have, this is what education is. This is what life is. All right. That's why I started by defining it, that, we have to survive. And the way we survive is we have to remember the past and plan for the future. And so that's what education is. And so that's what we should be offering at the highest level for college students. So I welcome any additions, disagreements, alternatives, other comments. Again, I know this is maybe a bit simplistic, structurally speaking, but I think we need to have a broader perspective. We need to zoom out a bit and get back to the basics of what education truly is. And this separated 3-part kind of domain style of university is a better approach for young people to have a better understanding of what college is or could be, to help them save money, get on with their lives sooner, and again, be prepared to make truly valuable contributions to the broader culture. So hope you like my idea. If not, let me know. I'd love to hear more and keep the conversation going. But thanks for watching. See you next time here on English.